Good evening, folks. I appreciate you all coming out for our special call meeting, February 13th, 2020, 6 p.m. Madam Clerk.
Councilmember Jimmy Clanton.
Here.
Councilmember Rob Turner.
Here.
Councilmember Jasmine Cobble. Councilmember George Turner.
Here.
Councilmember Tammy Grimes.
Here.
Mayor Jason Leary.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Mr. City Attorney and Mr. Joyner, bring us up to speed on this matter that we have to have for this opportunity this evening.
I was looking up my numbers here. Good evening, Mr. Mayor, Council.
Yes, sir. Good evening.
The single issue before us is to the staff's request and recommendation that the city sign a tax anticipation note so we can consummate the deals on the Sams building and the Sears building. As we're aware, it had been our plan, and it continues to be our plan, to issue bonds through the Urban Redevelopment Agency to finance the purchase of these two properties. In any event, based on the events of last Monday, we will not meet our schedule. It was a very tight schedule to begin with to try to get the bonds issued in time to close based on the two purchase and sales agreements. The closing date for the Sams building in the contract is March the 2nd. The closing date for the Sears building in the contract is March the 5th. And so we had a very, very tight schedule in terms of getting certain steps done between the city and the URA in order to issue the bonds to finance the transactions by those two closing dates. At this point, we will not meet those time frames. And so at risk is, one, not purchasing the buildings, losing out on that opportunity, on those opportunities, secondarily losing over $200,000 in earnest money that we would forfeit if we don't close at the prescribed times. And so, being solution oriented, we're thinking, well, how do we not forfeit the earnest money? How do we not lose the opportunity to purchase the buildings? And the staff is recommending that the city borrow the money and sign a tax anticipation note to finance the purchases, and then we would repay the TAN either late March, early April. Once we issue the bonds through the URA, we would use the bond proceeds at that point to repay the TAN. We have a limit on how much we can borrow, and so we have to we can get a tax anticipation note for an amount not to exceed 75% of our unrestricted tax revenues for the preceding year. And so what does that mean? Unrestricted SPLOS would not count because that's restricted. We can only use SPLOS for very specific limited purposes. So our SPLOS monies would not count in terms of meeting the tax collection threshold. But all of the categories that would apply, it comes up to a little bit over 4.8 million. And so we could borrow 75% of that, which is 3.6 million, which is not enough to buy both buildings. But we would, our recommendation would be to use the TAN proceeds to purchase the Sams building. That's our recommendation. And I will use all of my skills to renegotiate an extension of the closing date on the Sears building, and that has been a bit contentious up to this point because they're anxious for us to close, and I think they're kind of getting cold feet. Think, well, is the city of Stonecrest really serious about buying this building? But we'll try to talk them off that ledge and get an extension of the closing date for the for the Sears building, and extend that back to late March, early April. I'll probably say early April, so I don't have to go back to them again. Then we would use the TAN proceeds to close on the Sams building, and then repay that loan once we issue the bonds. That's our recommendation. And I'll just say this: I was Monday night. I was thinking, my goodness, how are we going to salvage these deals since we had missed certain deadlines? And so it occurred to me that we could do a anticipation note um, since we would not get the bonds issued in time. The reason I mention that is because I have nothing to present to you this evening like the TAN documents or things of that nature, because this is just kind of the thought that occurred while I was sitting at Fletcher's on Monday night figuring what we're going to do. And so I kind of figured it out at that point. So I make this recommendation to you now because I think it's the best course of action that will allow us not to forfeit the earnest money and also not to miss out on the opportunity to purchase the buildings. If the council were to authorize us to move forward in this direction, it would just be an authorization to bring back to you certain documents and information which the council would ultimately have to sign. The the turnaround, our financial advisor for this matter, Ed Wall, indicates that we could get this done in a week, best case scenario, 2 weeks, worst case scenario. So this time frame would allow us to meet our closing deadline. So tonight, staff is asking for council authorization to move forward in this direction.
Okay, council, floor is open.
Question, Mr. City Attorney. What is the interest rate on the TAN?
That I do not know at this point, because we are thinking of using BB&T, who has purchased our bonds, and we've already had some very, very preliminary conversations with them, and that is a very fair question. I cannot answer that question at this time. Obviously, we would not recommend that the council do anything that's well outside of market rates or something that's exorbitant interest that's unfair and unreasonable to the taxpayer. We would negotiate an interest rate that's fair and reasonable and in line with the marketplace.
Let me just say, I know this is not your standard purchase, and you were speaking of the URA kind of putting this one together, and with the purchasing policy not related to, well, it is related, but not in the same manner, requires public hearing and a bunch of other things to take place. And that was a question I had been working with the city manager on. Where do we stand on those steps in this process? And exactly what, and you said it, but I want you to say it again, exactly what does this commit us to?
Yes, sir. The purchases were authorized by the council. We talked about it a little bit in executive session, and the staff got the green light to sign the purchase and sales agreements. So we to the extent there's been a deviation from the purchasing policy, I think that we've kind of ratified that at this point in terms of our commitment to move forward. What we're asking for tonight, however, commits us to nothing. What we're asking is for authorization to move forward in this regard, but ultimately it's going to require the council to vote to the specifics of the deal. Because I'm not asking you to kind of give us a blank check and just say do it and then we'll commit the city. Obviously, we're going to have to bring it back to the mayor and council, and you're going to have to look at this. We're going to have to hurry though, because obviously these closing dates are looming. We're measuring time in weeks, not months, and we've already committed this earnest money, which we don't want to lose. And I understand you don't throw good money after bad, but I mean, I don't think there was any dissent or any notion that these were not great opportunities for the city of Stonecrest, and that's why we've been moving forward in this regard. And so the plan this evening is to keep us on track to make these acquisitions, and even though we would be borrowing money to make the purchases, we only it'd be a very, very short term, because we're going to turn this around really quickly, and then the URA will issue the bonds, and then so even the interest that we would pay would be negligible, and it certainly would pale in comparison to the loss of almost $300,000 in earnest money.
Okay, so if I understand what you just said, some great revelation comes about tomorrow and we said, oh, bad deal, pull out, pull out, pull out, we can still pull out of this deal until the council agrees to the next step that you're going to bring to us.
Yes, sir. And I think the plan would be we at the very next council meeting, because it's going to take a minute to put all of this together. I mean, I'm making it sound like it's a snap of the finger, but it's really not. It's going to take us a while. I think that maybe before the next council meeting, at the next council meeting at the latest, we would be prepared. But it might be before then, and so it might be necessary to ask you good folks to spend another short evening, a few hours in the evening with us, or a few minutes in the evening with us to kind of approve the TAN deal. But in any event, the goal is to present this to mayor and council, because obviously you have an obligation to look at every decimal point to make sure that this is the best deal in the city's best interest. So our goal is to hurry and to bring it to you sooner rather than later. You can vet the documents and then finalize your approval at that point.
And that's where I stand. It takes me a little time. I have to read it twice, thrice, sometimes more. And that's why I wanted something in writing that I could go through and try to digest.
So, and I certainly appreciate that, and that makes perfect sense to me. The goal would be to for the staff to hurry and to and we would send it to each member of council, and you can look at it and ask questions, and then we can kind of approve it either at the next council meeting, or if it's my hope, we can do it much faster than the next council meeting. Then we would come back here in a special call meeting and just get it done. So, but the goal is to put this deal together and not lose out on the opportunity by our inaction.
I understand that. And you speak of the loss of the earnest money, and that would be really tragic. But something else came up much earlier, and that is that by purchasing these buildings, we're taking it off of the tax roll. How much are we taking off the tax roll by taking these two buildings, by purchasing these two buildings?
That I don't know. I don't have those figures.
Partially, I can answer partially of that, if you don't mind, Councilman.
Okay.
We'd take zero off the tax roll for the Sears building because they've been abated since 2000. The Sam's Club was valued at 40% of 9.77, if I recall correctly. However, we don't collect that tax either because we're at a zero millage rate. So we're not losing any money at this particular time, tax-wise.
You're telling me that these two buildings have paid no taxes to DeKalb County?
Paid to DeKalb County.
And when DeKalb County collects taxes on properties in Stonecrest, we don't get it?
Zero. So to be clear, there are no taxes collected on the Sears building. So that's a wash because they're abated through 2020. But the Sam's Club building, your statement is 100% correct. They collect the tax and they keep it because we have a zero millage rate. So this year, I've said this at every community meeting that I could say it at. We're going to have to eliminate the cap on our charter and move those millage rate opportunities that the cap collects with regards to those revenues so that we can collect them ourselves.
Not to be argumentative on this matter, I need more on that because I just find it hard to conceive of us having buildings in the city limit DeKalb County collects taxes on. We get nothing.
Zero.
Even when there's an abatement, they still pay a percentage.
Goose egg.
Okay, I hear you.
I mean, you can look on your tax bill yourself. I mean, we can talk to Irvin Johnson.
Yeah. And the numbers are there. It doesn't say they collected it, but there's the numbers there.
Yeah. Yes, sir. We don't. I mean, we're here every day with this.
Okay.
We're here every day with this to see every number. We don't get that money. We get the insurance premiums and all the other stuff that we talked about.
Incredible.
Council, are there any more questions? Any more clarity with regards to what are we doing here this evening?
If I may, I just want to be clear that the specific ask this evening is that the mayor and council authorize the staff to prepare a tax anticipation note in the amount of $3 million to cover the cost of purchasing the Sams building, and that you authorize us to seek an extension of the closing date with regard to the Sears building, so that we can accomplish that acquisition in time with the bond closing date.
Yes, ma'am.
Being new to the council, I'm concerned that maybe conversation happened before I got here. I feel like I don't quite know as much as I should know about the good deal. When I get information or questions from constituents about what they've heard about this being the city center, and it's juxtaposed to what's in the comprehensive plan, I don't have an answer for them because I've not had this discussion with the mayor and council. So I am a bit behind in the conversation. I don't quite know how to frame that other than I just need more information.
I can give you a little bit of it now if you like.
Yes, sir.
I've heard those conversations also with regards to the comparison in the comprehensive plan with the location of a city center versus where we have it today. The actual physical center of town, if we could use that term, would be probably in the Browns Mill, Evans Mill area. Stick a stake right there in the fork of it, almost in the edge of, in middle of District 4 and 5, the physical center of town. Give about a mile or two or so, if you will. But the functional center of town is the commercial area, which is up here. So with that, even though having participated in the comprehensive plan itself, it talks about with regards to having the center of town or town center. That area can't be in the physical area of our geography, which is the Browns Mill, Evans Mill, that area. So then you have to go to the functional area of our town, of our city, which is here in the commercial district. That's why it was as you and I both put it, because I use the same term, a good deal, a great deal, to move on the properties that we have today, that we have in question today, but specifically the Sams building, and that's where we would be, making our center of the universe, if you will, at least for starting with us anyway. City Hall, possible post office, small theater, all the things that we've been talking about. So essentially, Councilwoman, you follow the comprehensive plan as close as you can, but there are some times when you have to, deviate from that roadmap to take an opportunity that we had today. And at any time you want me or any of the staff members to do a deeper dive, we're open for that.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. So, Council, the issue that we have today that's in front of us is as such. One, because I want us to be clear about where we are today. As Mr. City Attorney said, this would give staff permission to put the tax anticipation note together with whichever institution that we're going to use, whether it's BB&T or CBT or who's it going to be. Then come back to council so that you know every specific of it at that point, and then take that vote for authorization. But there is one thing I want to be clear about. We have some wiggle room with regards to Sears because of quite frankly, very good job that Attorney Winston Denmark has been negotiating with them. We have no room at Sam's. No room. They've already told us, you missed this date, we keep your money, and we've got somebody standing by. And that, folks, we just cannot do. So if we don't have any questions, I'm ready to take a motion, or ready to make one.
I have one more question.
Yes, ma'am.
If we say the closing date is March the 2nd for Sam's and March the 5th for, March the 2nd for Sam's, March the 5th for Sears, but we're really more concerned about Sam's if we had to put a 1 and a 2. Yes?
Correct.
Today is the 13th. And I know you said, Mr. City Attorney, that it takes a while to put it together. Best case, 1 week, worst case, 2 weeks. What would happen if there was a request to have conversation after this meeting before making that decision?
Conversation
The
with whom?
decision tonight that you're asking for,
Yes, ma'am. Conversations with whom?
mayor and council, before making this decision, if we have the 2nd as the closing date and the 5th as the closing date?
Well, I mean, obviously, the mayor and council can do whatever you think is best. My advice and my recommendation that we move forward this evening with you authorizing the staff to take this step. You know, the best laid plans sometimes run into the snags. We have just enough time to get this accomplished to close on the Sam's building by March the 2nd. If we delay any further, every day that we wait is a day that we increase the risk that we lose the buildings or the building and lose our earnest money. With Sears, everybody likely knows the Sears is in bankruptcy, and this whole transaction has to be authorized by the bankruptcy court in New York. And so that process could be delayed by the bankruptcy court. So with Sears, there's an opportunity to get them to extend the closing date because they probably need some time because they are dealing with that bankruptcy process. And the bankruptcy judge could approve the sale tomorrow, or it could happen in the middle of April or May. So they don't know. And that uncertainty with Sears makes it more likely that they will agree to extending us. Not certain, because we've asked them before, and so we've extended it already. And so that's why I really don't want to ask them again, but they might be more likely to extend us. Like the mayor says, with Sam's, if we don't do this now, we're toast. I mean, it's just, and that's why in my recommendation is that we move forward now and not delay with regard to Sam's, because every day we wait is a day we miss out. We risk missing out on the opportunity altogether.
Did something happen that caused us to be in this? I don't like to rush stuff. I guess that's my.
Well, I mean, be very candid. All of this was on the agenda for Monday night. We were supposed to have a public hearing on the urban redevelopment plans, and we were supposed to approve the bond resolutions, and that didn't happen. And so that put us in a position that we're in now. And so that's why I had to kind of sit up at Fletcher's and think, well, how are we going to salvage all of this? And the thought that occurred to me in consultation with the financial advisor is to do a tax anticipation note, since we missed our benchmarks with regard to the bond issuance because we did not have the public hearings on Monday and we did not have the meeting of the URA to approve the bond resolution on Monday. So that's what has us in this position, and that's why I appealed to council to have a special call meeting tonight to authorize the staff to take what I consider to be these critical steps so that we don't lose these opportunities and lose this earnest money.
Okay, last question, I promise.
Yes, ma'am.
From Monday to Thursday causes us to be in a hurry.
Oh, yes, ma'am. Because, I mean, it was a tight schedule, and we had public hearings which have to be advertised. So even if we re-advertise the public hearings now, by law, we could not have held the public hearings tonight. We have to have at least 15 days. And, I mean, that the schedule is shot. Had we done it on Monday, we likely would have made the schedule. We didn't. That is what that is. But here we sit. So now it's what do we do? And what do we do is what I'm proposing, which is this course of action.
Thank you.
Council, any more questions? All right, having said that, I want to make a motion to give staff authorization to move forward with the tax anticipation note and to negotiate the extension of the Sears building. Do I have a second?
Second.
All right, we're in discussion mode. Is there any further question or any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, folks. I'll take a motion to adjourn. All right, all in favor? Aye. All opposed? Thank you.